And we are ready to start. So, good morning, everybody. Shavua Tov. It should be a wonderful week for everyone, and I hope everyone had a fantastic Yom Tov. In the chat section of the Zoom session, we have posted the document needed for today, which is Zohar, the section of Nasso. The Zohar portion of this week is quite long, so we have chosen two sections of the class of the Zohar for this particular class. In the document that you have in front of you, you can open up and you will see the first section. This section was quite interesting. That's why I decided to start with this. It's a bit of a continuation, actually, of the topic matter that we spoke last week. And it's in Zohar, volume number 3, page 121b. And it says, Tochaze, come and see, Bishaita divnei nosha, the michin, that when the people, human beings, are sleeping, the time in time of the Mesa, and they're experiencing a taste of death, Venishmisa salka le'ela, and their soul rises above, Kaima ba'asa de kaima, so then it the soul is ascending and going there to the level that it reaches. Vespechinas al ovoda the avdas kol yema, and it is at that point that the soul is examined on everything that it had done on that day. The kaspin lahu al piska, and it's all written down for that soul. My timer. What is the reason? Begin the nishmasa salka le'ela, because then when it comes time, the soul goes up to whatever level it can reach. Vasidas ulovadai devarnosh, and the soul actually gives testimony about everything that this person has done. Kol mila umila denafik mipume, and about every single word that came out of his or her mouth. V'chad ha'imila de'apik ba'nosh mipume, ihi kedeka yaus, and if the wording is the way it should be, the words that this person is saying are proper. What does it mean proper? Mila kadisha, there are holy words, the oraisa of learning Torah, utulesa, and prayer. So hahi mila salka uvakarekiin, that those words of the person goes up and it actually pierces through the heavens. The kaima be'asar the kaima, and it reaches the levels that it's supposed to reach. So in other words, every single thing that we do during the day, its effects linger on. We think that, okay, it's something we did and something we thought and something we said, and it passes. The day is over. A worst case scenario, we're worried about whether we said something to someone and that person remembers or not, are they upset? That's only one side of it. In other words, that's between us and our fellow. However, besides that, every thought, speech, and action is actually, once it goes up, it has its place of how far it could reach as far as level, depending on whether those expressions of the person, thought, speech, and action, were holy, or God forbid, the opposite of holy. So depending on the holiness of the words, it's how far those can reach. Ad the al layla, until comes at night. V'nishmesa salka ve'achid lahi mila, until the soul leaves, and in other words, at night the soul rises from the body. As you know, only one portion of the soul remains in the body while the person is sleeping, and the rest of the soul is having an ascent, and it goes up. So when that portion of the soul has an ascent and goes up, and it actually becomes unified, it seizes on to the very same words that this person had uttered. and then goes up to present it to the king, everything that was said. And if those words, for example, that were said are not proper the way they should be, and let's say those are things, matters that are no good, for example, milishna bisha, like evil talk, like gossiping, like lashon hara. Hahi mila salka asar de salka. So then it's the opposite of what we just spoke, which is that those words also, the improper words, will go up to the assigned place for such a words in the heavens above. It's reshim hahi mila, and then these words actually end up having a mark on that soul. So the soul actually ends up bearing the mark spiritually, the mark of everything that was said that wasn't pleasant. Vahu chova alei de banash, and that becomes then the commission, the sin of that person. And that is what it says in the pasuk, mishocheves cheikecha shemor pischei picha, that from the one that lies under your bosom, you should keep the openings of your mouth, which is very poetic of a sentence in the book of Psalms. And what it means is that you have to, your soul, because your soul is the one that is going to rise above and have to give testimony and witness exactly to what it said. So from the one that lies within your bosom, you should, because of that, be careful with whatever it is that you open up your mouth with and you talk. And because of this, it says also in the pasuk, I'm sorry, that other verse was from Micha, not from Tehillim, from Book of Psalms, but now is the verse from the Book of Psalms that says, Asher Adam lo yachshov Hashem lo avon. How lucky, fortunate is a person that God doesn't consider for him a sin. And the verse finishes by saying, in other words, qualifying that statement, that when is person very lucky, when there is no trickery, there's no guilt, there's nothing wrong in his spirit. So in other words, it's a matter that the spirit, the soul of a person has to deal with when it goes up to the heavens above. So as a matter of fact, when it comes to not only on an individual day and night basis, but overall, what we're talking about, after 120 years, the soul goes up and they review the files, and then they say, okay, listen, there's a whole long list of, your laundry here, that everything that was done wrong, and the person would say, sorry, I have no idea what you're talking about. I mean, I don't remember such thing, So it's at that point that they say, 1 second, let us pull up we have the PDFs of your own signature when you came up here that night and you signed onto it saying this is what you did. Now you're telling us this is not you. So everything is all written there. If nothing else, the fact that in our day and age, the age of technology, I think one of the things that computer science has provided for us is a deeper understanding of some of the godly phenomena that we deal with. Namely, the fact that we always read how it says in the Mishnah that everything is written in front of God, and God is supervising everybody, and everybody's actions, thought, and speech is kept track of. So these were considered bombastic statements in the olden days. Of course, the Jewish people always understood it in the right form and so on and so forth, but they didn't really have anything of this physical realm to be able to relate to these statements about God and godliness. Comes along the age of technology, and suddenly you have supercomputers that could hold data And soon after hard drives were introduced, now you're talking about terabytes and terabytes of data, where literally we are now at a stage where every single person's emails, pictures, videos, documents, everything is recorded and everything is exactly traced to the person, including your conversations, thanks to NSA. So here we go. That goes to show you that yes, God is capable of literally keeping track of everything and keeping the records for 120 years. And by the way, that is one of the reasons I think we learned last week in what we reviewed in the Zohar of the Torah portion of the Midbar about the fact that for those that know the wisdom of reading the features of a face, right? There is the wisdom of Kabbalah, of mysticism, of being able to see what the person is all about through reading the face, where such thing for those righteous people of the high caliber that know these Kabbalistic knowledge are able to see a person, look at the person, and see exactly what has transpired with this person. Why? Because as we just said, that a mark of any misdeed and wrongdoings is left on the soul of the person, which then manifests itself. The soul is attached to the body, so therefore there is physical features associated with that mark on the soul. So a righteous person is able to see someone and and be able to tell exactly what has transpired with that person. Okay, now we are going to move on to the second section, which is the Torah portion of this week, page 144b. So by way of introduction, let me first tell you what this section is talking about. This section is the tail end of what is called in the book of Zohar as the Idara Rabbah, the great Idara. What is Idara? Idara is an Aramaic word which is referring to a circle, more precisely to a like a threshing ground, granary. Um, so in the olden days, you know, when or still these days, when they're threshing, let's say the wheat and so on and so forth, they have an area and the produce is in a circle and they work with it. So which resembled a circle. So the reason why this section of the Zohar is called the Great Idara, the Great like circle, is because that's how this particular study session happened for Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his students. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, on many occasions, revealed very deep secrets of Torah. Of course, he was always teaching secrets of Torah, besides the revealed aspects of the Torah. But there were certain times when these were like, completely off the chart, if you want to say, as far as the depth of their the holiness and the secrecy of these knowledge. So one time when 10 of them were sitting all together, including Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and besides Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, there was his son and 8 others, which were the top, the creme de la creme of the group of the students. And Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai decided to reveal to them certain aspects of the secrets of Torah that up until then he had not revealed to anyone. And he was really in doubt if he should or not, because these were such a high levels of the knowledge of Kabbalah that even angels were not privy to it. And after debating back and forth and not being so sure if the students are ready for it or not, the decision was, and he saw signs from the heavens above that he's got the green light to go ahead and reveal this. And it goes on. It's a huge section of this week's Zohar of everything that he taught, and some are super lofty and need a lot of um, work and foundation to be able to understand them. In between all of this, by the way, three of his students experienced what is called a burning yearning to such a level where their souls actually left their body. Okay, and at a certain point, as soon as this was observed, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai stopped, and he was worried that maybe it's as a punishment for revealing too much of the secrets of the Torah. And then he was assured that by the heavens above, that no, that's not the case. It's not a punishment. It's that these three were on a special lofty level. And there's other commentaries as well as to whether those three were not able to hold down their own soul. In other words, maybe they were not as experienced as the rest going into such a sphere of revelation of the secrets of the Torah, and maybe that's why they weren't able to hold on to their souls in a physical body. Yes, go ahead, Beth, but go ahead and, yeah.
Did their souls come back? Or that was it?
Good question. The answer is no. Their souls didn't come back. Okay, so that was just to tell you of the caliber of the subject matters that were being discussed. And then after that day, when all of these secrets were discussed, so comes a day of reflection, so to say. Rabbi Shimon was sitting with the rest of the students, and then he raises a question, and he says, and that's the text that we have in front of us now on page 144b. So Omar Rabbi Shimon. So Rabbi Shimon said, Tavano al hahu chagir chartzon more desare. I wonder about the one that is girdled. He has a sash around him, and he has a lot of hair, which this was a kind of descriptive nickname given to Elijah the prophet. Elijah the prophet was always girdled with a sash and had hair. So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says, I wonder about him. How come he didn't show up on that day when we were sitting at the Idara, revealing all these deep secrets of the Torah? How come he didn't come? How come Elijah the prophet didn't show up? Because Elijah the prophet usually shows up anywhere where there is new insights of Torah being revealed. So he says, how come he didn't come? Which is fascinating, obviously, when you think about it, that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was so used to having all sorts of souls, holy souls, come and go, where he's kind of like, it's to him, it's a simple matter. Hey, how come Elijah the prophet didn't show up? Of course, mind you, Elijah the prophet had already passed away years before that. So the way he is talking about Elijah the prophet is the same as we. In other words, Elijah the prophet, who's no longer physically alive, right? He's a soul. And we're talking about the same Elijah the prophet that we expect on the night of Passover, and we expect at the time of circumcision, of the bris milah, right? So he says, I wonder how come he didn't show up bezimna this gallion milin ilen kadishin, at a time that such a holy matters, secrets were revealed for the first time in this world. He wasn't there. At the hachi, and while he was saying this, Asa Eliyahu, suddenly Elijah the prophet appeared. Uslas katfore nehirin ba'anpoi, and there were three sparks of light that were shining in his face. which some commentaries explain that this may have been actually the souls of those three other students of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai that had passed away. So Amar le Rabbi Shimon. So once he appeared, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai asked Elijah the prophet, "My time lo shchiach mar bekarduta gilifa de mare beyema de hilula." What's the reason that my master, referring to Elijah the prophet, was not there at a time when we were showing, we were painting the picture, and we were engraving all these different deep secrets of God on that day of happiness and joy? Why was it a day of happiness and joy? Because it was for the first time that these secrets were being revealed in this world, in the physical world, and also in the spiritual worlds. In other words, in some of the higher worlds, for example, where the angels were, such secrets also were not known to them. And all the worlds, upper and lower world, were happy. Happiness and joy was there. And where were you? How come you were not present? What's the reason that the angels, which themselves are spiritual and are in the higher spiritual realms, didn't even know about these secrets that were revealed by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai? Because the subject matter, which we really didn't go into, it's quite long, and was taught on that day, was all about revealing the inner making of levels that are called Erech Anpin and Atik Yomin, which are different components of what is called Keser, the crown, which is higher than the 10 Sefirot, the 10 levels of Atzilus. So I know we have briefly learned about the world of Atzilus, right? The first spiritual world and the other worlds below it. But what Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai discussed mainly on that day was the level that was prior to the world of Atzilus, before Atzilus came to be. And being that the angels themselves are not even in the world of Atzilus, but they are in the lower world of Yetzirah, so therefore they would have no knowledge of what transpired before. They cannot relate to it. They could only understand up to the level of their own world. Different, however, is a person which has a soul, and the soul itself, as we learned in the book of Tanya, is from God himself. The soul put in the person is literally part of God. So therefore, a person has the capacity that if works on himself or herself, and or for whatever reason, it would be revealed to him, a person is able to comprehend even higher than the level of what the angels would comprehend, all the way up the ladder of creation and all the spiritual realms. So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was wondering and tells Elijah the prophet, "Where were you when I was revealing all these secrets of the Torah?" So Amar so Elijah the prophet responded to him and said, "Chayecha Rabbi, to your life, my Rabbi." To your life is an expression almost like I promise you. To your life, Sheva Yemin, that's 7 days before you and your students entered the idara, so to say, that setting where you all sat down to learn. And by the way, this was once the students were ready to learn, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai took them to outside to an open area of the field where there's trees and so on and so forth. And that's where he sat down in a circle. He sat everybody down in a particular order in order to teach them. And he prepared them. He told them who is allowed to now enter and would be suitable to learn these secrets of the Torah. Then he asked everyone to join, to put their hands together to get them ready. And he said a few different introductory secrets of the Torah until they were all ready to move on to the high level. And this location, by the way, is known even as of today in the northern part of the city of Tzfat, the city of Safed, the location where they sat down to learn these secrets of this week's Torah portion is known where that location is. A lot of people go there, sit down to learn and to study. So Elijah the prophet says, "Is beriru kame kucha berichu kol inun the yesun the ishtakon ime adlo ailusun the veidara dilchon." That 7 days before you sat down to teach, there was already a whole process in front of God of choosing of which angels and which souls of the righteous people are going to be joining God Himself to come down here when you're going to be revealing these secrets of the Torah for the first time. And I was also ready. I was also amongst the ones to come down here to listen to your words of Torah. And it was not a secret to me. It's not like I didn't know about it. And I asked God that I should also be together with him when he comes down to listen to the first time that you're revealing the secrets, that I should also have the merit to be present together with the other angels and the other righteous people that are going to be there. However, but then suddenly on that day, God tied a mission to my shoulder. It's an expression. In other words, God suddenly told me, sorry, I've got something else for you to do, and you got to deal with it. Why? And he continues, and I couldn't come. What happened that day? Elijah the prophet is telling Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Dahu yomo shadarni kuchabirichu lemevad nisin lerab hamnuna sava v'chavroi. On that day, God sent me to perform some miracles for Rabbi Hamnuna Sava and his students. What happened? Because they were given over to the kingdom. In other words, the authority of that time had arrested them, and they were stuck in the chamber in the palace of the king. And I performed a miracle for them. I broke down for them the wall of that chamber of the king, the Malka. In other words, it all crumbled. And also there were ties that were tied up, meaning there were people in there. Besides the ones that I served, there were other people that got stuck in the aftermath of that destruction, in the rubble. The misu arbaim v'chamisha pardashche, that in that wall crumbling down, 45 of the ministers of the king died. And I took out of there Rabbi Hamnuna Sava and his group that were with him. I took him to outside the city. And I took them to the valley of Ono, which was a great distance away. And so how did he do it? He actually caused what we call kefitzat haderech. There is a phenomena that is known to those of high caliber in the world of mysticism, when they are able to shorten the path, that any distance that normally would be traveled with whatever time it takes, it would take a fraction of that time for them to travel. It is well known that the Holy Baal Shem Tov used to utilize this method of Kefitza Saderech with whatever way people of that caliber are able to travel. Let's say on a Saturday night, he would travel with his students a path that would normally take a week or two to go with horse and buggy. He would make it there in a matter of hours. He would be at that location, and then whenever need be, he would be back. So that's called Kefitza Saderech. So that's how Elijah the prophet also took Rab Hamnuna Sava and his friends and took them to that location, and he prepared for them v'zaminina kamayhu nachama umaya, and I prepared for them and I put in front of them bread and water because they had not eaten for 3 days. And all that day that I was that you where in the Idara, so to say, sitting in the circle and revealing these secrets of the Torah, I was there together with Rabbi Hamduna Saba and making sure that I don't abandon him, that I take care of him and his colleagues. So before we go on further in the story, there is an interesting talk of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He actually spoke about this the very first year after he became, he took on the leadership of becoming a Rebbe. And over there, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who was talking about the coming of Mashiach, brings down this section of the Zohar, the fact that Elijah the prophet is saying, sorry, I was tied up and God suddenly gave me a mission and therefore I couldn't be there. So in his talk, the Lubavitcher Rebbe in the year 1951, again, the first year that he became the Lubavitcher Rebbe, he brings this section down and he says that, okay, everyone knows about the night of Passover, and everyone knows about a bris, right? Circumcision. And we have guests of honor for a bris, Elijah the prophet. In fact, that's the reason why we don't necessarily and clearly invite guests directly. We don't say you are invited to the bris of my son or my grandson or whatever it may be. We say, hey, by the way, the bris of my son or grandson is on this and this date. In a roundabout way, we tell people that the bris is there, and they of course understand that they're invited. What's one of the reasons, the customs, that we don't directly invite people? Because the guest of honor for a bris is Elijah the prophet. And therefore, we want to be respectful to the fact that he's the guest. Everybody else will let them know and they come. And the same thing we have the night of Passover, where at a certain point, we all fill up a cup of wine and we put it there for Elijah the prophet, right? It's called Kaishel Eliyahu. So now you may ask, how could it be? There might be hundreds and thousands of bris going on anytime during a day, and they all coincide. And what is it? We expect Elijah the prophet to come to every single one, right? So that means he could be in multiple places at the same time. Or we're talking about the night of Passover, where we all pour the cup of wine for Elijah, and we go and we even open the door, and then Elijah the prophet is supposed to come and drink from the wine. Of course, we shake the table to make sure some of it spills so the kids actually think he's drinking, but whatever. That's a fun activity by itself for Passover night. So it means that Elijah the prophet could be in multiple places at the same time. So what kind of excuse is this? Or as our teacher would say, what kind of lame excuse is this that he's coming up with, suddenly telling Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, sorry, I was tied up somewhere with something else. I had to perform a miracle for your friend, Rabbi Hamnuna Saba, who's also a holy man, and therefore I could not come. So the Lubavitcher Rebbe explains in his writing that the difference is that at the time of a bris milah and at the time of Passover night, Elijah the prophet comes without a body. So
where are we, Rabbi, exactly? I've lost it, to tell you the truth.
I'm sorry, could you repeat yourself? I didn't hear you well.
No, I lost where we are exactly. I know you're talking about Elijah, but...
Okay, you talking about in the document or?
Yeah, in the document, yeah.
Okay, so we are on page... we are on page 3. We're on top of page 3.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and I have, so to say, pressed the pause button at the middle of this to learn together an explanation that the Lubavitcher Rebbe gave. So the Lubavitcher Rebbe gave the answer that here's the difference, that by a bris and on a Passover night, Elijah the prophet comes without a body, which means it is like the spark of Elijah the prophet. Of course, it's not a literally spark, but that's an allegory speaking. If Elijah the prophet is a fire, full flame, imagine a spark of it is present. And in Hasidic teachings, explains the unique allegory of a spark. A spark, although it may not be the flame itself, it contains in it actual flame, even though it might be in a different format, but it's the real flame, the spark. It just happens to be at this moment separated from its full body. So too here, it says that the presence of Elijah the prophet at a Bris and Passover night is like a spark. And therefore, it can be in multiple places at the same time. However, when it comes in a matter, in a situation where for the honor of righteous people, he, Elijah the prophet, would reveal himself with his body, with his entire essence. And therefore, when he does so, he cannot be in two places at the same time. So Elijah the prophet, without the body, could be in multiple places at the same time, as many places as needed. But if it's with the body, that's a different story. So, and the Lubavitcher Rebbe continues in his talk. Of course, I'm not giving you the entire speech that he gave about this part, but just the highlights. And the Rebbe continues over there and says, and therefore Elijah the prophet, when it was the time of his passing, that is why it was necessary for his body to go up with his soul. As you know, Elijah the prophet is one of very few people, I believe it's a total of 5 people in history, where their body went up with the soul. And what was the reason for that? Shegufa Yishar B'Shleimus, so that his body would also stay complete in the world of Yetzirah. So we have the world of Atzilus, then Bria, then Yetzirah, then Asiya. Okay, so the body of Elijah the prophet actually stays and resides in the realm of Yetzirah. And whenever there is a need for it, the soul of Elijah the prophet is able to enclose itself in the body again, down here in the physical world. And that's when he's completely the way he was, Elijah the prophet. Now, in general, what was the reason? How did Elijah the prophet come to the level that his body also went up? Of course, I'm not, God forbid, an authority, far from it, to be a complete maven and be able to understand and explain all the intricacies of how a body could reach such a level. However, at least I could repeat to you what has been taught, which is that Elijah the prophet had reached such a level during his lifetime where everything of his, all aspects of his life, was pure spirituality. That even his physical body had been elevated to the level of being everything about it purely spiritual. Therefore, since there was no aspect of physicality, there was no shlita, there was no power, there was no control of levels of impurity having any hold on his body. So therefore, his body was able to be just like his soul. And therefore, it was able to ascend with his soul completely pure. And it's in the level of the world of Yetzirah for any occasion that need be if Elijah the prophet needs to come back down here in a physical body. So that is, now we have a better understanding of what the Zohar says in the conversation where Elijah the prophet is giving a reason why he wasn't there. Based on the explanation of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, we now understand it's because he had to be in a physical body there with Rabbi Hamnuna Saba because he was a great tzaddik. In his honor, he didn't just go in spiritual format, but he showed up in his physical body, and therefore he couldn't be in two places at the same time. So we continue in the text.
Rabbi?
Yes.
Your voice is becoming muddled, and the quality of it, I can barely understand you.
Okay. Let's see. Is that everyone's experience? So I'm just wondering if it's from my side.
Yes.
Beth?
Ready to say, I was ready
There was
to.
a little static. There was a little
Okay.
static, but that's all.
Okay, so yeah, I think the problem is anytime I move, the microphone is very sensitive, and the rubbing against the clothing maybe does it. Okay, let's see if this would make a difference for this part. Is it clear now?
Yeah.
Okay, Good, good.
Yeah, we had that before, and you did the same thing, I think.
Yeah. Okay, great. So the conversation continues, and now Elijah the prophet tells Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, "V'chatavno ashkachno parsa denodukol inu samchin." And so I finished whatever I was doing that day to save Rabbi Hamnuna Sava. And then by the time I finished and I came back, I saw that there is these pillars, which is an expression referring to angels, that are carrying carrying something, and these three members of your students were on it. So in other words, I saw the angels basically carrying these souls with them to the heavens above. Visha Ilna, so Elijah the prophet says, so I asked the angels, what happened? Why are these three, the souls are leaving this world? The Amru, and they answered the angels, that these are the portion of God from the joyous occasion of Rabbi Shimon and his friends. So, of course, the answer itself is a deep answer and needs lots of explanation. But basically, they explained to him that, this was a very special thing that went on there. And whatever happened, happened. As a result, these three souls are coming up. And then Elijah the prophet told Rabbi Shimon, Zakah and Rabbi Shimon v'Zakah chulakach, that fortunate are you, Rabbi Shimon, and fortunate is your portion. V'chulakach the inun chevraya the yasmin kamach, and also fortunate is the portion of the members that are sitting around you, in front of you. Kamodargin is the tekanu lachon la'alma de'aseh. Many levels have been prepared for you in the world to come, many spiritual levels. Kama butzinin denahirin zeminin lenar lehu, and how many lights that would emanate in the future are going to be shining for you. In other words, Elijah the prophet said, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, you have a very unique level, and what's in store for you in the world of truth is something out of the ordinary. V'toch hazeh, Elijah the prophet goes on to explain to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai how unbelievably amazing the experience of that day was, also to all the souls in the heavens above. And over there it says, come and see. Dein beginach atru chamshin kistin Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair Chomuch. Come and see that on that day, with the strength and the merit of the secrets of the Torah that you revealed in the heavens above, your father-in-law, Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, was crowned with special crowns. Of course, not physical crowns we're talking about. And I went with him to all those streams of afarsimon oil, pure afarsimon oil, and he chose for himself a very respectable place in the Garden of Eden, and there he settled down. What does it mean that I went with him and he chose from the streams of the afarsimon oil? That's allegorically speaking, talking about levels of understanding. Oil in Kabbalistic writing, as well as in many parts of the book of Tehillim and other books of prophets, oil is referring to Torah, to knowledge, to understanding. So in other words, there were special crowns given to Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, his father-in-law. And what were those? Those were, so to say, the possibility of even a higher level of understanding. So Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair went because of that and was able to choose a certain level, and he was able to settle down there and now be able to understand even deeper in the heavens above. Of course, we're talking about because Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair had already passed away, the father-in-law of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And we're going to finish with the last part, which is also interesting. So Amar Lei, so Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai now had Elijah the prophet in front of him, and it says, okay, listen, we got to go while the iron is hot, right? Let's go for it. Let's ask him some questions. So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai asks him, Keturin tzadikaya bekartufa de itrin? I want to ask you if the tzaddikim, the righteous people, are tied to the crown, to the root and source of the crown. What does it mean? If the soul of the tzaddikim, of the righteous people, which are in the worlds of Biriya, Yetzira, Asiya, the lower three worlds, if they are tied and attached to the level of kingdom of the world of Atzilus, which is called the crown for the lower worlds. So, and in particular, he wanted to know if that happens Bereish Yarchei on Rosh Chodesh, the first days of the Hebrew month, Ubezimane, and also during the holidays like Passover, Shavuos, Sukkos, V'Shabbosei, and on the day of Shabbat, Yasir Mikol Sha'ar Yemin, more than any other day of the year. So Amalei, Elijah the prophet tells him, V'af kol inun de levar, even all the souls of the wicked people, those that are from the side of impurity, they all, in the times that you described, their souls are able to go up and be in the level of Malchus of the world of Atzilus when it comes to Rosh Chodesh, when it comes to the holiday, and it comes to the day of Shabbat. As it says in the verse, V'haya midei chodesh b'chodsho, and it was, behold, on the beginning of every month, Jewish month, umidei Shabbos b'Shabbato, and every single Shabbat, and the verse over there finishes that all flesh will come to bow in front of Hashem. So what does it mean, all flesh? Meaning even the wicked people, even their souls is able to come to that level. So Elijah the prophet finishes off and says, Elaine Asyan, if these souls of the wicked people get to come there, how much more so Tzadikaya, the souls of the righteous people? So the answer is yes, they absolutely do come. And then Elijah the prophet goes ahead and explains the reason here. So he says, in the verse it says, every first of the month this happens. So what is the advantage of every first of the month? Why does this happen? Mishum de misatze avahosa resicha kadisha. Because then the fathers become a chariot to holiness. What does it mean the fathers become the chariot to holiness? It's referring to the level in the world of Atzilus, the level of the emotional attributes. If you remember, they start with kindness, severity, and beauty, right? Kindness, severity, and the mixture of both of them is called beauty. Chesed, Gevura, Tiferes. So allegorically, those three are nicknamed in the writings of Kabbalah as the fathers. So those three, actually are able to go up to the level of Chachma, Bina, and Das, wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. So on Rosh Chodesh, that's what happens. On the first of every Jewish month, it's a special day where in the spiritual realms, there is an elevation of those levels of kindness, severity, and beauty, Chesed, Gevura, Tiferes, and they go up to the level that is normally higher than them, which is wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. So therefore, there's an elevation. And then furthermore, he says, Umidei Shabbos b'Shabbasoi, and in the verse it says also every single Shabbat. What is the reason for Shabbat? The misato shebi'o the whole inun shita yomid, because then the seventh one is elevated and is crowned with the 6 days. What does that mean? The seventh one, when we're talking about the emotional attributes, right? We start with chesed, kindness, gevura, then tiferes, netzach, hod, yesod, and then the lowest one is malchus, the lowest sephira in the world of Atzilus. So the seventh one, which is malchus, gets crowned with the 6 days. What are the 6 days? If you recall, we said when God created the world, every day he utilized another sephira. The first day was the sephira of kindness. The second day was the sephira of severity. So on the day of Shabbat, the lowest level of Atzilus, which is Malchus, is actually affected and has a flow of blessing from all the 6 levels above it. So the 7th one, Malchus, is blessed with the 6 days, referring to the 6 attributes of Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferes in the world of Malchus. So therefore, on the day of Shabbat, automatically, the day of Shabbat has an elevation. We had spoken about this in one of our previous classes, and that is the reason, and this is the beauty of it for us to read and understand. It says in the verse, and this is what we finished today's class with, where it says, in the verse that says, Vayvorech Elokim Esrim HaShavi'i, and God blessed the 7th day. Right? We say this verse, which is from the book of Genesis. We also say it during Kiddush, right? And God blessed the 7th day, which literally understood, the simple translation is, of course, today is Shabbat, and God has blessed it, so it's very special. But really, it's also giving you an understanding and an explanation of why Shabbat is special, because on the day of Shabbat, Yom HaShavi'i, the 7th day, it's beautiful. It's in the verse itself. The 7th day, which is referring to the level of Malchus, the level of kingdom in the world of Atzilus, is blessed by God, by Elohim. The 6 attributes of starting with Chesed, with kindness, together are called also the level Elohim. So the 6 bless the 7th, which is Malchus, and therefore that becomes special and holy, the level of Malchus, on the day of Shabbat. That's the reason behind it, why on the surface of the verse, we just simply read, God has blessed the 7th day. So now you read the fact that God has blessed the 7th day, but at the same time, you could think about the deeper meaning of it, of how, why is it that the 7th day became holy? Because the level of Malchus, the 7th level, receives its blessing from the 6 upper levels. So next time you're making Kiddush on Friday, now you could have not only the meaning of the verse, but you could have these lessons of Kabbalah and mysticism that you could meditate on and really enjoy. Okay, that is the lesson for today. Any questions? Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Pleasure. And of course, if any questions pop into your head at any given time, you know how to reach me.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.